Where'd you get these two guys from?
Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the Catlin Sport Podcast. Daniel here and Sean beside me. Sean, how are you?
How's it going?
And we've got a busy weekend to get through here. There's Jose and Ollie talk. There's Pep struggles in the Premier League. Talk a lot about the handball rule. There's also Dundalk in Europe, GA Club Championship action and Irish Open. So, Sean, I thought the best place to start would be straight to the Spurs and Newcastle game. I suppose, what did you make of the game first of all before we move on to Jose and the handball incident as well?
Well, I think it's probably, testament to Spurs under Jose that, they should have got the job done. They should have made it a foregone conclusion before any incidents occur. It laid on because, the game's never over in the Premier League, and to a 1-0 lead like that against a team like Newcastle who can bring off Andy Carroll off the bench. Thought they played, pretty well at times. Carl Darlow, the Newcastle keeper, kept his side in it. But, if you're Jose, he can kind of hold on to the fact that the penalty shouldn't have been given, and we'll get into that in a second, but he'd be more worried with his lack of goals in the side, really. You think Harry Kane didn't score, had a couple of really good chances, keeper makes a couple of good saves rather. There's one that comes across and that he should try and hit back across goal, the keeper sticks out a hand and saves, and you could look at that and say on another day Tottenham could have got 2 or 3, but they didn't, and they don't take 3 points from it in a game which they should have absolutely walked.
Yeah, Son coming off injured at half time was obviously a big moment, because I thought Newcastle or Spurs were dominant before half time, and subsequently after they weren't quite as dominant. But let's move on to the handball rule, because I know it's covered a lot of the Premier League games here. So I have the rule here in front of me. So it's an offence if a player touches the ball with their hand or arm when their hand or arm has made their body unnaturally bigger, or their hand or arm is above or beyond their shoulder level. Now, the above offences apply if a ball touches a player's hand or arm directly from the head or body, even the foot of another player who is close. So it's not really deliberate handball anymore. That's the problem we're dealing with. So the old rule back in the day, where it used to be deliberate handball, then a step on was brought in, and I guess this is just a further step. And a lot of Europe has been using this for the last year or two, and it's only now this year the Premier League has strictly been enforcing it. But it seems they might even be going a little bit beyond what UEFA and Europe are doing. I'm thinking, would that Andy Carroll, Eric Dyer penalty be given in the Champions League? It's hard to know, isn't it? I'm just 50-50 whether would it be given or not firstly, and then we'll get into whether it's right or wrong or not, obviously.
Yeah, but there's always going to be discrepancies between leagues and even between referees, and the fact that it's a lot of people are being wound up by the fact it's gone into slow motion, and looking at that from the naked eye, even just watching on the TV there, it doesn't look a handball, doesn't appear to really be a deliberate hand or stop the play advancing, really, which is kind of what the handball rule should primarily be about. And the fact it goes into slow motion, and Dyer's head's looking one way, his hands going the other direction, and we've seen it across the Premier League now in the last couple of game weeks, that it's just it's a bonkers rule, and it's going to keep affecting games. You look at Joe Ward's handball in the Palace game, it's just bizarre, really. And then you could argue that the one before could have been given. If the one before it's not given, why is the one that is the penalty in the Everton game not given?
Well, the reason it is, just based on the rule, is the first one, Ward's hands are a lot closer to his body than the second one's a little bit further out. When I say a little bit, we're talking a little bit. But I put it this way: watching the game, I kind of knew the second one was going to get given. So it's gone back to the stage where people wanted consistency over common sense, and now we're getting consistency over common sense. Now it's that age-old debate. You know what I mean? So they've obviously gone way too far with it, in terms of people are just going to start, what we were saying a couple of years back when Gary Lineker tweeted that out about just give every handball. These are good strikers in the Premier League, they're just going to keep, and wingers, they're just going to keep hitting the ball against defenders.
Yeah, and it's how I wonder if you look at last season and seasons before, how many penalties were given for handball. I'd say we probably eclipsed it already in the first couple of weeks, and it's sort of frustrating now. Every sort of break and play, there's a VAR check, and there's a check for this, there's a check for that, and it's just sort of adding up and eating into your enjoyment of it, really. And it's getting to the stage where it is beyond farcical, and Steve Bruce came out happy with a point that they got from but he wasn't happy with the manner of the penalty, and he wants to see change. And Roy Hodgson's similar, and I'd say Jose Mourinho is similar in that regard.
It'd be interesting what the Premier League and the FA can do here, because it's the IFAB's law from a couple of years ago, and Premier League, similar with VAR, they were kind of using it differently. This year they've had to FIFA have stepped in and say you have to take on the protocols here, which is why you see referees going over to the monitor, which is good. But I guess on the other side of things, the handling of the ball thing, I know if the managers, I reckon what will happen is the referees will ease off a little bit. It's just the threshold and where they go to it. It's a bit of a mess, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I remember last year there was an international break at the start of last season, and there was a lot of debate about the threshold of clear and obvious, and it changed dramatically after that international break. And as we're heading into an international break in October, I think we could see something similar, where there's a message going out to Premier League refs to maybe ease off, like you say, or change the directive that's coming from whether it be the FA or FIFA or whatever it is. And at the end of the day, though, there's points being lost because of it. What's to say Tottenham don't lose out on a European place by 2 points, or Jose Mourinho in a couple of weeks after those run of games, say for argument's sake, a manager gets sacked because of an incident like that. It's, it is frustrating, even just for the viewer watching that game. Everyone, in the world would have known that Spurs deserved the 3 points, and in the end, their lack of goals affected them, but, a harsh penalty affected them as well, and it's a real shame, because you don't want to see games spoiled like that, and the big talking points out of the games is VAR the whole time, and the ruling of the handball. Yeah,
well, it's more to me like this was a handball rule as opposed to a VAR, although the two of them kind of go hand in hand. And again, my fear is just with these changes from the international break, what the Premier League powers and the FA, because FIFA were pretty strict in making sure our Premier League were enforcing all that. A couple of things to pick up before we finish off on this game. Jose had a bit of a pop at Ollie's there, because Ollie mentioned that they should have checked the goalpost, having Brighton hit the woodwork 5 times there yesterday. Jose seemed to take it a bit personally, mentioning that Ollie wouldn't want the penalty box to be 17 yards. He'd want it more 22 yards in the reference of penalties, amount of penalties given to United. I guess it's unreal really to have the United Spurs game next week, having all that little joys at each other. And there was another drive after the match, which I'll come to in a sec.
Yeah, just Jose probably still annoyed with losing his job there at Manchester United. I know he also talked about Spurs probably not being a bigger club and not getting the rub of the green from the FA in terms of favourable fixture schedules. But, you talk about penalties in the Manchester United-Brighton game. Again, VAR controversy there.
Well, just on the Paul Pogba, Aaron Connolly instance, Jose actually mentioned this in his post-match press conference to Sky, and what he said was, he mentioned that Eric Dyer pulled back Paul Pogba in that 1-1 draw the first game after lockdown. Do you remember that game? And that penalty, and he said that, he goes, you look at that penalty, and he mentioned the Pogba Aaron Connolly penalty, saying that was the same. That's what Jose words were. So he was obviously seeing that, reckons and he reckons that cost him Champions League football last season. That's what he said. So yeah, moving on to that Paul Pogba Aaron Connolly penalty.
Yeah, well, I think it's a stone wall. I couldn't believe it. I didn't watch the game live, but I saw it back a couple of times. I don't know how it's been overturned. I think it's brilliant centre forward play. It's what so many players have made a living out of it. You look at Jamie Vardy even yesterday, getting in between the defender and getting himself in between the defender and the ball and drawing the foul. 3 of Leicester's penalties came from that on yesterday, and that's just really good play by Aaron Connolly, and he gets penalised because I don't necessarily know why. Does it look like he seems to almost push his leg back towards Paul Pogba as opposed to the other way around, where the other penalties that he was, for example, the Vardy one, it seems like Vardy cut across a bit more. For that one, it just looked like from the angle that the referee didn't see, which is why he was at the monitor, that Aaron Connolly kind of kicked back to Paul Pogba. It did look like that, but albeit there might have been a foul already. So. Yeah, you could argue that, is he trying to stop Paul Pogba from getting the ball, and he gets his body in the way, but Paul Pogba puts his knee onto the back of Aaron Connolly's knee. He's going at that pace, he's got the momentum, he's going through goal, it's the danger. Does Paul Pogba attempt to play the ball? Probably not. So in that regard, it's a penalty. And I actually heard Chris Wilder speak last week about the penalty given in the Sheffield United Villa game, wondering why it wasn't a red card, because Matt Targett appeared to not really look to play the ball and merely take Basham down. which is a red card offence. Now, I'm not saying the Paul Pogba one's a red card, but I can't believe it goes from it not being a penalty to, in another world, potentially being a red card because it's a goal scoring opportunity. So it's really, really bizarre. I couldn't believe it was overturned. It's not a clear and obvious error.
Well, the clear and obvious error would be the VAR official overturning. I guess he's asked the referee to have another look at it on the monitor. So it's the referee that ultimately makes that decision.
No, because how many times does a referee go to the VAR monitor and stay with his decision? Very few times. I think there was a few.
Well, he still has the chance.
There's a few in the World Cup there. We haven't seen any in the Premier League this season. So I couldn't believe it wasn't given. I thought it was an absolute stone wall. In certain times, big clubs get the decisions over smaller clubs. And if you look at Brighton, I thought they really deserved to win the game, and were unlucky, albeit, they hit the post and the crossbar 4 or 5 times, and that could affect them going forward. If they had taken 3 points or got something more from the game, they would have been delighted, and going forward it'd be a huge step for them. And as a result, I just don't know why it was overturned. Personally, when you consider some of the other penalties given during the week that were similar tackles and similar plays.
Moving on to the sticking with the actual game itself, you'd worry about Ollie again, and in United they just seemed to, Brighton were the better team ultimately. I think that was kind of agreed across the board with everybody watching it. United did look threatening on the counter-attack, but Brighton seemed to have a really good system there with Connolly and Mope, and United's midfield seemed to kind of lack a bit of something there in the middle with Pogba and Matic.
Yeah, well, the lack of pace at the back, we said before. Wan-Bissaka's not the quickest, Lindelof's not the quickest, nor is Maguire, nor is Shaw, and it's a really slow and lethargic backline at times, and Brighton got at them, and you can imagine every other manager is licking their lips to get at them. You think if Tottenham can get Son fit, Mora,
it's a hamstring injury, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, but even like Mourinho will know where to target them. Ollie will probably know where teams are going to target them, and at the moment it's United's Achilles heel, because they can be as good as they are going forward if they still leak goals and can be cut open as easy as Brighton did it to them. It's a huge worry for them in midfield. I think, look, I don't know if they've grasped what Paul Pogba's about, what role best suits him. Matic is good, but again, he's not the quickest, and you could argue maybe a McTominay, if they got him fit and firing, could be a better option for them.
Where does Van de Beek fit into all this? In a few weeks when you reckon he will get in the team, you'd presume, just purely, I'm guessing, based on him being a new sign, and he's just kind of betting himself into it as opposed to not starting, as in can't get into the starting 11. I presume he'll come into the team. Just where will Van de Beek play? For example, can you see him starting against Spurs next week? And if you do, or if there was a small chance, where would you play him?
Yeah, I'm not sure really. I think he's more of an attacking mid. Could he play a box-to-box role? But potentially he's got that sort of energy for it. But I think he was sort of brought in as an extra body in there. You could play a Matic or a McTominay alongside a Pogba, and then if you want to play Van de Beek as the 10 and move Fernandes out wide and maybe drop a Greenwood or a Martial, that's potentially what they could do. But at the moment, I don't see him starting Van de Beek, just purely on the fact that he doesn't at the moment look as if he's going to take the place of one of those midfielders. And look, they paid a lot of money. He's sort of the marquee signing of the summer, yet they aren't getting the best out of him as of yet.
Yeah, look, exciting game next weekend. Obviously the Ollie Jose spat, I'm sure there'll be a few questions asked him in the pre-match press conference. I wonder will anyone bite. Jose's comment was funny about he'd rather give the money to charity than the FA, so he didn't speak out at the handball. But again, the handball thing will be very interesting to see. So I want to talk a little bit about Pep Guardiola, Manchester City, Leicester. They seem to be missing Aguero and Jesus big time. I don't think you can understate that. It's Guardiola's 5th season. It's the first time he's ever had a 5th season. We mentioned that in the show last week or the week before. He's a very intense manager. I know this is only one defeat, but this defeat was something like 5-2 at home to Leicester in the second game of the season. It was a very worrying sight, particularly the fact that they seemed to be so open at the back and there wasn't pressure on the ball. And the ball, like the 3 penalties were given away by the 3 of their back 4. And Pep Guardiola brought in these defenders. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, again, it was only one defeat, but you'd have to worry for that Manchester City team and Pep Guardiola going forward in those games.
Yeah, they were so vulnerable at the back, and I thought he got it wrong when he took off Fernandinho for Delap at 1-0 when, yes, you are not really chasing the game, but you want to attack the game and win it. You don't take off your best holding midfielder and someone that does an awful amount of work has more legs than Rodri does there. The problem Manchester City have, I think, at the moment is that they're missing someone like Gundogan in that midfield that's going to link the play, get the ball into De Bruyne. How many times did we see De Bruyne come deep, come wide to get handy ball, because they couldn't find him in those pockets that makes him so successful. It's sort of the passes that David Silva has made, Bernardo Silva has made, and that midfield, they just could not get the ball through to him quick enough. When you're missing Aguero and Jesus, you've got to make the chances that a little bit easier, so you need De Bruyne to be so pivotal in the middle, and he just could not get in those channels, and he could not really run at the Leicester defence, and that's a huge problem for them going forward. Phil Foden is still young, he's still learning the game. There's no doubt.
Is he a left winger? Because that's where he was playing, left wing forward.
Yeah, and you could argue he could be more central, but without Jesus or Aguero, it's we can't really play that role. So I was really just shocked at the defending and the penalties given away. If you're any team preparing to play Leicester, and in particular a team that has Jamie Vardy, whenever he gets in and around the box, you're telling your defenders to just be careful, try and limit the damage to what he does, because he's just, how many penalties does he win by just getting in that little gap and drawing a foul out of them? And Leicester are so similar. They were just able to put the ball in behind the Manchester City defence, and to be honest, they could have scored 7 or 8 at times. They were a little bit in the first half. They had a couple of half chances where they just couldn't get the ball, that right final ball, and be worried if I was Guardiola in that sense, because you're going to come up against a lot of teams that are going to play like that. If they come up against an Arsenal with the pace of an Aubameyang or a Pepe or most teams, your Chelsea, if Chelsea can get themselves firing with Werner going in behind, and I'd be worried for Manchester City. I don't think Eric Garcia is up to the level. I thought Nathan Ake played quite well, and then you bring Laporte in. Can the two left-sided centre-backs work together? We'll have to wait and find out. But yeah, for someone that spent a lot of money on that defence, and
they're all his boys.
Yeah, they're all his boys. They're all 30 million player worth of Mendy, 30 million, Walker, Nathan Ake as well. So I'd be worried with how easy the goals came about and how easy Leicester found it to get in behind them.
Yeah, I think with Pep Guardiola, it goes back to that Lyon game last season where he played 4-3-3 all the way through, and when it came to a big game, he decided to throw all that good work out the window and go for a three at the back. And I don't know, this 5th season, I'd worry a small bit. I think it comes back to those big games, and to still be mentioned at 1-1, I don't know, I'd be a little bit concerned.
Yeah, and you're concerned in the fact that to win the league, you're going to have to get 90 plus points at least, and that's something that will worry Guardiola, but he still has the attacking quality and the managerial experience to get through this rut. And it's important for every team that they don't get into a rut. The likes of Sheffield United, 3 games already, 3 losses. They're in a rut now to try, and it's going to be hard to get themselves out of it.
Just to touch on very quickly on Chelsea, they were very poor against West Brom and did very well to escape with a late minute equaliser. Frank under a bit of pressure there already.
Yeah, and I suppose it's not his first season either, and people are kind of forgetting that almost, and a lot of people are saying they've improved in nearly every area, but had they the right manager to move them forward, only time will tell. In that regard, they were just so poor really for the 3 goals, just so sloppy defensively. Again, West Brom could have scored 4 or 5 in that first half, and it is going to take time for them all to gel. Timo Werner's not going to start banging in the goals all of a sudden on his own. They've got to find a system. We spoke about their midfield before. I thought they went without Jorginho. Now there's rumours that he could be linked with a move to Arsenal, so whether that's why he was dropped. But their midfield was appalling really, with Kante and Kovacic in there, Havertz as well. I just thought, look, there was no way they could control that game without Jorginho. And do you play Kante and Jorginho and drop Kovacic? He's been one of their better players last season, and it just looks like they're lacking a real balance to their side. And even for the goal that Thiago Silva gives away, Thiago Silva gives it to Kovacic. Kovacic gives it back to him when if that's Jorginho, he's probably taking it, moving the play across, controlling the game, whereas Kovacic puts the ball back to Thiago Silva. Yes, he should do better with it, but the goal is probably avoided if Jorginho's on the pitch.
Yeah, I just get this feeling with Frankie seems to be making up as he goes along in terms of trying to find his right team. And I understand it was a short pre-season, but like you should have plans in place for when you know you're going to sign Timo Werner from a couple of months ago anyway. And then Havertz, I understand, was a late addition, but I just thought it was strange bringing Tammy Abraham in based on his performance in the Carabao Cup and kind of pushing Timo out wide. I thought he did quite well in the centre over 2 games. Now he has played off the left for Leipzig. But I do think he's better from the centre. So, I just got the sense he's making it up as he went along, really. And even that change in midfield kind of shows that. So, they might have a bit better structure with Mendy. And to be fair, Alonso's not at it at all. So, when Ben Chilwell comes in, he'll be good. But they've spent a lot of money. Like they can't just keep like putting in performances like that. I understand it. Again, it's early in the season, but
the top managers don't make two big decisions like that at half time, but bringing on Alonso and Hudson-Odoi and drastically changing the way you're playing. And that's, something that Frank is battling with now, trying to find something, trying to find a way of playing. And at the moment they look really poor because West Brom cut them open, and it was great to see Callum Robinson take the goals the way he did, both really good finishes. And for them, they've been a real kind of surprise package, albeit not in terms of the league table, but in the way they're playing. Really free flowing, sort of not really what Slaven Bilic is sort of known for, but they've got real quality in that side, the likes of Pereira, Diangana, and if Robinson can start scoring the goals for them, who knows, but defensively you would worry for them again. And the keeper, Sam Johnson, is for someone that's been really good at championship level and being at Aston Villa, he's just not at the level of the Premier League, and so many sides go down, and a huge part of that is their goalkeeper not really being up to scratch.
Yeah, no, I thought, saying all that, I thought Dara Shea did quite well, which bodes well for Ireland's games over the next few weeks. Moving on to on Everton. It seems Everton, we talk about the same things every week, but we're going to leave the handball penalty because we kind of put that in the Spurs game. But James Rodriguez was unreal, David Calhoun was very good, Richarlison was very good, and Jordan Pickford tended to punch a lot rather than catching, and you could argue he probably should have made a little bit of better effort to save the goal, albeit the header was very close in.
Yeah, and we've spoken about Everton a lot now, and they just continue to impress.
Very impressive, aren't they?
Yeah, continue to impress. Like, one thing that Ancelotti, he had that sort of half year or whatever it is to find out the problems. One of the big problems was their midfield, and he sorted that with Allen and Doucouré. They've got a real sense of balance and a real structure to how they want to play. The way they play, they get their fullbacks to push forward, Lucas Dean and Coleman, and the gaps that would hurt Everton in the past, and would pit the opposition strikers against their centre halves. Now they've got Allen and Doucouré in there for cover, and create so much from those fullbacks that it's so important they do have cover for them. And at the moment, Everton are all singing, all dancing, playing from the same hymn sheet, and they look really, really strong. And we said they could be the surprise. I said they could be the surprise package. If you're an Everton fan, you're very happy with how they've started, but it's a long year, and they'll have harder games to come. And
Ancelotti compared Coleman to Maldini there, great captain, so his words not mine, so it's fantastic. And to a prediction, you got pretty good start to your prediction there, to a prediction you haven't really got right so far, to be fair. Leeds have been very impressive, not just their great performance against Liverpool, their win subsequently against Fulham, and this was a different kind of win because they managed to dig it out in the last few minutes with a Patrick Bamford goal, and that's 3 goals in 3 games for him.
Yeah, and this is the kind of game that when I was thinking of Leeds at the start of the season, this were the kind of game I thought they could struggle, and they managed to just grind it out, and that was their best performance today, because in terms of they weren't at it for large parts of it. It was a pretty dull game. Sheffield United again are struggling. They're a team that wherever Leeds or Sheffield United end up, they're going to be close enough together. So to get 3 points away from home in a game in a Yorkshire derby that means so much to the fans in terms of that, to be back in the Premier League playing Sheffield United. And Patrick Bamford, the ball was put on a play for him. He couldn't really miss, but he's had a really good start to the season. We talked a lot about having a good start, being able to kick on from that. 3 goals and 3 for him, and 3 different goals the way he's taken them all, and that will impress Bielsa, because Rodrigo hasn't really started as well as maybe the price tag.
Well, he hasn't really had the chance.
And even when he came on today, I just thought he was a little bit, came on at half time, didn't really get into the game as maybe you'd like to have, but Leeds have been so impressive, and today I thought they're pretty resilient defensively. The keeper pulled off a couple of brilliant saves, and
he's 20 years of age, France under 21.
Yeah,
and he seems the real deal there, Mesier.
Yeah, and he's playing instead of Casilla. There's a lot of stuff about Casilla, and there's a couple of charges labelled against him for racial abuse. But Mancilla's taking his chance, and he's doing really well. And I was very impressed. I'm delighted for Leeds because they're a brilliant club, and they've had a good start, 2 wins from 3. I really hope they can kick on now and prove me wrong, because when you're thinking of Leeds at the start of the season, is that the game they could kind of go and win and really push themselves on to be a top 10 or a top 12 side, and they ground it out, and hopefully more of the same for them going forward, and more of the same for Bamford, and potentially an Irish call-up or even an English call-up for them.
Yeah, we'll kind of leave that alone. We mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. Last couple of games, Burnley 0, Southampton 1. If you haven't watched the game and you want to watch the highlights for this, don't. You think you want it, just don't. And we'll leave that one there. West Ham 4, Wolves 0. This David Moyes working from home, Lark, could work. Like, they were really, really good. They played really well on the counter, and I was very, very disappointed with Wolves overall. Quick word on that game.
Yeah, just bizarre.
It was just a shock, really, isn't it?
You think about predictions, and you could predict and judge everything till the cows come home, but no one could have predicted that. And
the two lads didn't. Anyway.
Yeah, I suppose the Premier League's going towards this state of sort of what the Championship has been for the last 4 years, where there's just random results that pop up. Like, even look at Blackburn started the season beating Derby 4-0 away from home there on Saturday, and it's just these kind of things you don't expect, and it's what makes the Championship so special. And it sort of results in the Premier League are becoming more and more like that, even the high scoring games. And not that you'd be worried, because it's an exciting league, but every team in the league is going to have performances in games like this where they get bet, and they get bet well, and it's just about avoiding a run and losing 2 games in a row, and that's huge for Wolves going forward. Look at Sheffield United, lost 3 already. They've got to go and win now. They've got to go and get points on the board, because they can't afford to get dragged into a relegation battle, and all of a sudden you're chasing, and it's a different mentality for the players, and it's going to be so important this year. And the teams that do really well are going to be the teams that avoid a bad run of games, because they come so quick in all competitions, and there's going to be a lot of injuries, and squads are going to be stretched, but it's so important to win after you've lost.
Yeah, a lot of goals, a lot of penalties, a lot going on really so far, and a couple of big games tonight as well. So we're going to touch on Dundalk really, because we had the Thursday podcast looking ahead to that. What a great win that was, and it's just great to see. And I know it's kind of opened them up a little bit. I think there's 2 kind of ways of looking at this. The first is the Champions path, where UEFA are really pushing champions to kind of have their own route through to seeking to get as many champions through to the group stages of Europa Leagues and Champions League, which is, no one could argue is the right way. But even all that, I feel like Dundalk have done well with the draws they've had in that Champions route. However, a fantastic penalty shootout win. It was weird seeing the footage and no crowd there. Like, it was almost more kind of emotional kind of scenes, because it was just kind of, there was no sound in the background. Like, it was brilliant.
And to think where they come from after sacking Vinnie Perth after that Champions League qualifier loss, and I suppose it's a real bonus for Dundalk this year. They would not have expected it, albeit they won the league last year. They haven't been anywhere near it this season in the league, and I lost to Rovers last night 4-0, albeit it was their second team, because they're
you wanted to talk about this.
Yeah, I just think it's the League of Ireland doesn't help itself at the best of times, and yes, they're under pressure this year because of COVID and trying to fit games in, but I just find it so hard how Dundalk are expected to play, and it's a huge issue now for a few years that Dundalk have played in Europe, won, been successful, and they're playing Rovers, and there's no way you can expect those Dundalk players who've gone to extra time and penalty shootouts and gone the trip abroad to come back and play Rovers. So as a result, Dundalk have played a second string team because they're out of the title race. And potentially now for Bows, who had a big dramatic win there the other night against Derry, scoring 2 late goals. To them, look at Rovers having to play a really poor Dundalk side would be really frustrating for them, and it's not a good look for the league either. You've got your 2 of the best sides in the league, and one of them has to play a second string side because they've done so well in Europe, and it's been a problem that the League of Ireland hasn't helped our clubs in Europe, and really I know they're under pressure for fixtures, and I know all that, and I appreciate it all, but you can't have Rovers playing a second string Dundalk team. It just kind of makes it a little bit of a mockery of everything, personally.
But where do you fit the league? Like, the reasons were given by the league was that they've nowhere fitting this fixture in before the end, particularly if Dundalk get to the Europa League group stages. And the second thing was they've got a big enough squad where they can play a second team. It seemed like it might be the best solution in where neither solution is great, obviously, but they're the kind of reasons really that were given. It just seems like there was nowhere really to go with it. I do understand that Dundalk having a weak build-up would have been a massive help in it, and this to win, I think it's like a 3 million windfall. It's just, compared to what you win for the league, it's just apples and oranges in that sense. Like,
yeah, it just comes from the League of Ireland not prioritising games in and around the European fixtures. Like, we know, okay, it's difficult this year, but you know roughly, and you get the dates for the European games. We need to plan around our sides in Europe as much as possible without sort of derailing the league. But
well, it's just important to say for listeners who are only kind of really wary of the Premier League that, you know, other leagues in Europe do prioritise their qualifiers in the sense that games are either called off or postponed, or they might be during pre-season, in which case that they won't have games. But it seems like other countries of our size that are kind of the same ability do kind of give them a week off in between games.
Yeah, because those governing bodies want to grow and improve the coefficient, which helps their clubs in Europe as a result. And the more wins Irish clubs can get in those qualifiers, boost the coefficient the whole time. I just think personally, going forward and into the future, we need the League of Ireland needs to help those teams and help us improve the standard of football and get more and more sides further on in Europe, because there's been too many times over the last couple of years where, you know, sides have gone into Europe and then, you know, might have struggled in the first leg and had a game in between that they'd needed to win as well, so they kind of play players who are tired, and then it feeds into the second leg and the fatigue. So, you know, it's just something that the league needs to look ahead to rather. But other than that, you know, Shamrock Rovers won comfortably last night, 4-0. Jack Byrne to start the show, and Stephen Kenny was there to watch Jack Byrne.
Brilliant.
So put it this way, and
he seems to be a midfielder that if he was playing for another club, he could potentially be in. So you'd probably expect Kenny to pick him.
Yeah, and there was a lot of talk that, you know, because the position that Shamrock Rovers were in, that, you know, maybe Stephen Kenny thought otherwise in picking him. Now that the league wrapped up, that's no excuse. There's no excuses there now for that. If Stephen Kenny thinks Jack Byrne is in his top 5 or 6 midfielders, which a lot of people do think, he's got to be in there. And he's someone that can play a couple of different roles in Stephen Kenny's midfield and suits him. So watch this space. I think, you know, he will be called up, and it's no more than he deserves, really.
Just so Dundalk are slight favourites going into the game. Do you reckon they can get through?
Yeah, hopefully.
It's in the Aviva against the Pharaoh champions.
Yeah, I heard Brian Kerr talk about them on Virgin the other day.
Oh yeah, he did, yeah. It's
a big game for Dundalk. They have a lot of experience, and that's something, hopefully, that will help them. You know, they
just need to win it.
Just
get through it.
The likes of Gary Rogers, the hero, Chris Shields, these guys that have been around a long, long time, David McMillan that's back scoring for them. It's so important for them now to just win, and hopefully they can do it at home. Everything helps in that regard, and it'll probably be a surreal feeling watching them hopefully run around celebrating in an empty Aviva.
It'll be deadly, yeah. That's Thursday night. So moving on to GA. Firstly, last week we had an episode with Stephen Duff, who's Portlaoise Ladies manager, and they actually won the Laois Club Championship there on Saturday. So big congrats to Stephen. He was on last week, as I mentioned there, to discuss the club and county split. So do check that out if you missed it. And yeah, a Dublin Senior Championship, Ballymun, Ballybowden. We previewed it there on Thursday. We expected, I think most people, to be fair, expected it to be a very close game, and it was pretty much over before half time. 14-point win for Ballymun in the end. Yeah,
Lyle and TJ Carter as well. It's a huge win for Ballymun, because they probably underachieved if you look at their squad.
Well, first Dublin Championship since 2012.
Yeah,
it's amazing. I couldn't believe that.
Yeah, and been in a few finals, lost to Vincent's in a couple of finals, but delighted for them because they've had a really difficult year. They lost their club chairman Declan Small, the father of John and Paddy, and it was very emotional scenes there at the end for the two lads. And you know, it's brilliant for them because, you know, for a team that provides so much to Dublin GA in terms of 6 or 7 guys on the Dublin panel, they haven't had the run of training together for a long, long time. So, you know, this year that they've had, the split season almost, if you like, might leave a legacy for the next couple of years, that they have a plan in place. And and hopefully they can build on, because they're a really remarkable club. Even if you just think of what they've done in the last 20 or 30 years, the documentaries that come out of it, the players that they provided to Dublin, you know, the likes of Paddy Christie, Philip McMahon, Dean Rock was in great form, and they won comfortably, really.
I just think, touching on a point you said there about the split season, like, think about Evan Cumber for the last few years. He hasn't been involved with championship games because they have another really solid goalkeeper there. So for Ballymun to have the whole, you know, couple of months run in with him, especially, I think that in particular it's just a sign of an example that you said, that the split season just suited them down to the ground, and hopefully going forward they're able to kind of kick on from that and realise this is the way to do it, and maybe push back a little bit on the Dublin team. And
even if you look at it, like the likes of Davy Byrne and Jason Whelan, that are extremely good club players and have been so important to Ballymun, the two lads that don't get to play for Dublin, that are probably in and around the fringes and other counties that would play, to be able to have the likes of Dean Rock and James McCarthy around and really drive the club on, because they deserve to win club championships. They're two very good players, just as an example, and a great win for Ballymun. Yeah, congrats to them. And one thing to mention, you probably would have seen the clip by now. It's actually linked in the description there if you want to see David Clifford's goal with the right foot. It's amazing, and again, it just shows what we talked about last Wednesday on the show with Stephen, that it's great having access to these games, and these clips going viral are nearly as important as the game itself, almost, just having those systems in place that we're able to catch this great little shot. The keeper doesn't move, to be honest with you. I watched it about 10-15 times myself, but he's a bit of a freak. And another win for East Kerry in the county championship. They actually improved their side. They got the Ratmore lads in, so Shane Ryan came in and goal, Paul Murphy at centre back. So I wonder if the Kerry County Board do anything to change the current setup of it, because, you know, it's not great when a regional side wins twice in a row, and they just look so good, they look so unbeatable, because the two Cliffords, Dara Moynihan, the two lads from Ratmore, they just look, at the moment, Jack Sherwood from Fieries, they just look, you wonder who's going to beat them, and they're only getting stronger and building together and playing together more and more, and it's very impressive and great in that sense, the regional clubs, because it gives smaller club players the chance to play at the highest level possible, and they might just need to manage the East Kerry side a little bit, because, you know, 2 in a row, what's to say that doesn't become 4 or 5 in a row, and you look at Immakilly down in Cork, that were really strong for a few years, and yeah, regional sides are great, but if they dominate like any other side, it's gonna be eventful. Something tells me they'll draw the line after 5 in a row. What do you reckon? Yeah, I'm not sure, but no, David Clifford is certainly up there with one of the best footballers in the country, that's for sure. And it's great seeing on Saturday night the Cavan final going to replay, and just RTE being able to show that game. It's just brilliant. Like, in front of a crowd, which and it's going to a replay. Yeah, and in front of a crowd was weird, wasn't it? Yeah, but even hearing the point at the end, the roar, because of it, it just felt pretty weird. Seeing that, and hopefully, look, we can get more and more of that in the months ahead. Very important, absolutely agree with you. Last thing, Irish Open. You wanted to speak about John Catlin. 2 wins in his last 3 tournaments, and a great weekend overall for golf course, albeit there was no crowds. Yeah, because I know a few people were worried. There's been a lot of high scoring events on the European Tour because of the lack of crowds and maybe the intensity that brings, and less pressure on players, and the course held up to it was really good. And as I suppose John Catlin is one, like you said, he's won a couple of times now this year, and he's gone down the sort of the Brooks, Koepka, Peter Uline route of coming over to Europe, trying to find his way in the world rankings, get up that, qualify for big tournaments. You know, because if you win on the European Tour, it opens up so many doors. You qualify for world golf tournaments, you get world ranking points, and you build your way up through that. And I've been actually surprised how more American players haven't come over. You know, there's been a few like Daniel Lim, David Lipsky that quite haven't made it, and I'd be shocked if more college players don't come over to Europe and try and, you know, break down the world rankings that way. But overall, very impressive from John Catlin. He hit an unbelievable 3-wood into that par 5 to secure the win, just narrowly pipping Aaron Roy, who was very impressive as well. Nearly went wire to wire. But a great week. Disappointing week for the Irish though. Yeah, I was just going to say, it was great seeing James Huger make the cut, and his round 1 of 67, and even his round 2 and 3. It was a disappointing final day score, but overall he'd be happy enough of making the cut. And it was interesting, I didn't realise this, that
he wasn't in this tournament until Lee Westwood had actually said played with him in the US Open and mentioned in an interview that he's still not in. He can qualify for the US Open but on his home Open, which I thought was very odd, but common sense prevailed there, I guess.
Yeah, he got a late tournament invite. He did. He was the leading Irishman there for a couple of days, and he'd be really disappointed though with his final round shooting 80. Look, that could do more harm than good. Even just the week that he had to finish with an 80 would be very disappointing.
I think overall I'd be happy enough, I guess. Maybe it's a long kind of travelling and stuff with COVID and everything.
Yeah, exactly, and maybe fatigue just kicked in, but he was in a really good position there on Friday. He was 3 under at one stage where the lead was 5 or 6, and just didn't kick on as well as he would have liked, and probably fatigue and all kicked in. Disappointing week for Shane. Again, not easy to travel over from the States and play, and the pressure of playing in your home Open. And he's in a bit of bad form, so I know he's taking a few weeks off and just
the next 5, I think so.
Yeah, and that will probably do him good as well. But overall, a really good week, and considering everything that's happened, the European Tour have done very well to spread out these tournaments across.
Yeah, fair play for them getting it on.
Yeah, to spread them across the UK and Ireland, and there's a couple of interesting shots. I know the fella, the farmer.
Oh yeah, so if you check our Twitter page there at Catlin Sport, you'll see it's just a farmer sitting there with all his cows. I thought it was great, and it kind of went viral a bit there. But it's like you said, it was great seeing. At least someone got to watch the golf live.
Yeah, 2020, but
2020 is a bit mad, yeah. So it kind of sums it up really, that video.
Yeah, but a good week for Irish golf nonetheless, and a few people probably disappointed with the lack of an Irishman in contention at the end, but the course held up, and it probably isn't one of Ireland's premier courses, but to still be the winner was 10 under. It is good going forward to show just how many amazing golf courses there are in Ireland.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's really it for the review there. Thanks for your time there, Sean. On Wednesday's show, we sat down with former League of Ireland player, Tunisian international Eamon Ben Mohamed, who now plies his trade in France's second division with Le Havre. Eamon grew up in Dublin, actually not far from us here in Ballyogan, and family still live there, and he's gone on to make 12 caps for the Tunisian national team. So he joined us on Wednesday for a chat. So looking forward to bringing that to you. That'll be in your podcast feeds Wednesday morning. That's really it. Yeah, thanks for listening to the show. Please leave a review if you're enjoying what you're hearing, and subscribe on your favourite platform so you don't miss an episode. We're really enjoying doing it, so we really appreciate you listening. That's it for Monday's show. All that's left to say is goodbye from Sean.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from myself. Have a great week. We'll chat to you.
The world's made up for you, so take advantage and be happy.